Preparing to go live. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the October U.P.B.C.A. United Professional and Barbers Cosmetologists Association conversation that we're having tonight. Tonight's conversation All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the October U.P.B.C.A. United Professional and Barbers Cosmetologists Association conversation that we're having. Sorry about that. Tonight's conversation, once again, is our October conversation, United Professional Barbers and Cosmetologists Association Shop Talk. And tonight's conversation will be about domestic violence. We have a great speaker that will be presenting. Two of our members are with us this evening, and one of them will be presenting. We have the great incomparable Johnny Scott, Master Barber extraordinaire, with us this evening. Welcome, Mr. Scott. We also have Dr. DJ Robinson, who has not only written books on this topic, but is very versed in this topic and will be speaking to us tonight. It's so timely that we're having this conversation around domestic violence. I wear many hats, and one of the things I was able to do this year was present my first piece of legislation to City Council, and it was a domestic violence piece of legislation that allowed our employees to be able to take time off from work to receive help if they were in a domestic violence situation. So I'm very proud of that legislation. I'm very proud to present it in such a time as this. With COVID-19, we know the statistics show that domestic violence has increased during this time. So without any further ado, I'd like to present to some and introduce to others Dr. DJ Robinson. You got to unmute yourself, man. You're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
This is going to be so fun. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. Thank you so much, Mr. Lightfoot. Thank you, Mr. Johnny Scott and the U.P.B.C.A. team for having me to present tonight on domestic violence. I'm so glad to be with you all this evening and so happy to be able to share some of the research that I've been doing. As Mr. Lightfoot said, I do have a publication that I have written. This is my book. It is called I Hope This Helps Someone. It is a womanist response to spiritual and psychological trauma, and it has a lot to do with the domestic violence that people have suffered and the trauma that it causes. So without further ado, I'm definitely going to get right into my screen here. And let's share. So what we want to do, can everyone see the screen? Yes? Wonderful.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. So last time I was with you, we talked about personal, spiritual, and professional awareness, and we wanted to expand that awareness. And as cosmetologists, as barbers, as appearance enhancement professionals, we definitely want to make sure that we understand the signs of having, when we have our clients, when we talk to our clients, whether or not they're going through crises and things of that nature. Since COVID-19 has happened this year, we find that, more people are now suffering with alcoholism. More people are now suffering with drug addiction. Other people are suffering more in their families with domestic violence. And at the same time, now that our youth are now engaged in remote learning, that same base can be even expanded even the more to be susceptible to drugs and alcohol and abuse and things of that nature. And a lot of that contributes. What contributes to that is poverty, things of that nature, not being able to have places to get that energy out. So what I tried to name this was domestic violence, things that we should know. For our viewers that don't know me, I am an MBTI certified practitioner for personal and leadership development. I'm also a licensed cosmetologist. I've been a licensed cosmetologist for 14 years, 15 years actually. I have a doctorate in transformational leadership and public speaking. My master's is in womanist theology. I have a bachelor's in organizational management and associate in administration. So just to let you know, I do have some credentialing, and to be able to research this topic well, or at least as well as I possibly can, and get this information out to you. A few things that I always say: the most powerful person that you will ever know is yourself. The most powerful person that you will ever know is yourself. So self-awareness is key. What you would need for this, if you have a pen, if you have a piece of paper, those are great things to jot down a little few notes, maybe even some questions that you may want to ask or propose to the group. And you definitely need to have an open mind that is willing to receive, willing to learn. One thing I've read in one of the books, I was reading a book about powerful conversations. One thing about leadership is to know that you don't know everything. And when you're willing to listen, when you're willing to come to terms with the fact that we don't know everything, then that's when we are at our best. And so you will definitely need an open mind for this session. Tonight's agenda. Tonight, I'm just going to give you a few points. That's all I really want to do is give you a few points. And we are going to have a conversation. We're going to facilitate a conversation. I want everyone that joins this forum to be advised that this is a public forum and it is being broadcast on social media. So we want to make sure that you don't put any personal information or anything like that out unless you want it out there. The next thing is the public portion. The public portion is an informational meeting. So this is the to educate our community on the topic. And if we need to have a private breakout, we definitely can have a private breakout meeting. As you know, it can be initiated as needed. So what I want to tell you about domestic violence. First of all, let's define what domestic violence is. And some people I've tried to look on the internet, but I think the best way that we can identify what domestic violence is by actually breaking it down. Because I want to go somewhere with this conversation to show how domestic violence can move from being just an isolated incident to being a communal problem. Domestic means relating to the running of a home, or to family relations or relationships, or an existing or occurring inside a particular country, not foreign or international. So this is why I wanted to show you how it moves from the home, family relations, community, states, things of that nature, all the way into our country actually participating in domesticated violence. Violence is a behavior involving physical force intended to hurt. So that means it's targeted, it means it's intentional, intended to hurt, intended to damage, to kill someone or something. And that doesn't necessarily mean physically when we start to expand the explanation and where I'm trying to go with this. But it means to kill you can kill someone's hope, you can kill someone's virtues, which we will go over later on in this presentation. The strength of emotion, or an unpleasant or destructive natural force. So some people are naturally violent. They just have a spirit, what we would call in the Christian world. And I'm trying to be as careful as I can, but I am a Christian theologian. And so if it comes out, I'm a preacher by nature. So if it comes out, just go with me. And so it's a natural destructive force. And we know that there are certain scriptures that lead to the place of saying that the enemy only comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. So there's a natural strength of emotion that is unpleasant or destructive. And then lastly, the unlawful exercise of physical force or intimidation by the exhibition of such force. So there are people who are in power, people who are in control, that will actually exercise their physical force or exercise intimidation or tactics against another group of people or another person, and that is unlawful to do so. So is everybody with me so far? Just nod your head, give me a thumbs up, all right, awesome. Great. Violence versus abuse. So what I wanted to show is that violence can sometimes happen. You get in a fight. Someone's emotions get triggered off. You're in the 5th grade and maybe you didn't eat that day and the other person was a bully that day or something of that nature, and you end up in a physical fight, or you just end up getting caught up into something. Well, that's a little different from abuse. So violence, I want to take that to be an isolated incident, but abuse becoming a pattern of behavior. And so a lot of people refer to this as intimate partner. When they say domestic violence, they say intimate partner. So intimate partner abuse, which could be intimate partner can be anyone. It can be a spouse, it can be a mother, a father, an uncle, anyone that is in that domestic area or is considered to be in that domesticated area or social context. This is an intimate partner. So the intimate partner abuse is a pattern of behavior using power and control within an intimate relationship that threatens another person's well-being. Well, I want to take it, I'm going to keep bouncing back and forth. I want to take it from just the home, because what happens is when these things are in the home, they begin to expand out into our community. And how many times have we seen our community to use power and control within an intimate relationship, meaning domesticated, in a domesticated relationship that threatens another person's well-being? What I do know on the political aspect is that they are trying to consider that racism as a public health crisis, because it actually is a relationship that threatens another person or another groups of people's well-being. So I want to kind of expand this domestic violence conversation to make it so that we understand that it's not just isolated to a one-to-one person, but it is definitely something that can be expanded upon. Intimate partner abuse is committed by an intimate partner, including a spouse or a former spouse or a current or former dating partner. And we also want to add, certain other factors, that this is not just between a man and a woman. We want to acknowledge that we do have other communities that are not necessarily hetero, but they may be same sex. And so we want to just make sure that we use non-gender specific language when we're talking about intimate partner abuse. Intimate partner abuse is also sometimes called partner abuse, domestic violence, family violence, and then there's another word that is used for it, which is battering. And we want to make sure that we also understand that abuse can take very many different forms, such as physical, emotional, financial, sexual, and psychological abuse. This is why it's so important for us as people in this society and in this community to understand where we are as far as these certain levels of physical, emotional, financial, where we are sexually, where we are psychologically. It really makes better sense for us to actually have that type of identity so that we can know exactly who we are and identify ourselves, so that we know what we will go for and what we won't go for. So far, so good. Everybody still with me? Good. Domestic violence, just a few facts. In the US, every 9 seconds, a person is physically abused by a current or former intimate partner. And remember, these intimate partners can be anywhere that range from family members all the way into person-to-person relationships, sexual relationships, things of that nature. This is for hetero relationships as well as same-sex relationships. 25% of women and 8% of men in the US. Now, here's the word that I want you to really pay attention to: report being physically or sexually assaulted. So this means that these are only the people who have actually come forward to actually say something, that they have been physically or sexually assaulted by a partner by some point in their life. There are a lot of people, especially within the Black community, that we have this notion that what happens in this house stays in this house. What happens in this community stays in this community. And so we have to remember that there are only 25% of women and 8% of men who actually report that these things have actually happened to them. However, I want us to know that domestic violence happens to men almost just as equally, and probably even now in this day and age, more to men than it does to women. Why is that so? Because my personal belief is that the the social justice or the justice system has been weaponized. And I can only speak as a Black woman in a Black community, that the police force has actually been weaponized against our Black men. And so now many of our women can play victim and say that they have been abused. However, verbal abuse is a sign of domestic violence. And so what ends up happening is women verbally abuse men on a constant basis. And so one of the things as a woman, as theologian, that I want to make sure that I am sure of, because I'm different from feminist theology, is that I stand up for our Black men. Our Black men should not be abused in any way, shape, or form. That does not mean that women should be abused either. But what I'm trying to make the point here is that Black men are equally abused just as much as women are. So it's not something that we want to put more emphasis on. The women are more abused than men. No, the men are just as much equally abused, especially with women, especially Black women being in more financial power, more financial gains. There are men who have been stigmatized in our communities, and so the women are making more money than the men, and so they can actually engage in financial abuse against the men in their homes. And so we have to take all of these type of things into consideration. So I put at the bottom my notes, I believe that many men are physically and verbally abused in intimate partner relationships. If anyone wants to chime in, you definitely can, but we'll definitely have some time at the end, because I'm almost through half of my slides. And if you want to write that down just to have a little conversation around that, I would love for you to be able to do that. Let's go to the next one. This is a domestic violence or a violence wheel. And this wheel has been one of the things that domestic people who do domestic research on domestic violence have looked at. And so we can actually order some of these. You can put these in your barbershops or in your places of business so that people can actually know how to recognize the signs. And sometimes you would need to be able to recognize the signs as well. This wheel has actually helped me be able to ask questions based on do you feel that when we look at, like, say, for instance, I hope you all can see my little marker here. When we say, is he threatening to commit suicide? Or is she saying that she'll kill herself if you leave her? We've heard those kinds of things in relationships before. So when you're talking to your clients or when you're, having those conversations, this domestic violence wheel can actually help us to ask those certain questions to kind of help identify whether or not the person is in a power and controlling relationship. Power and control is at the center of violence in every situation. And so once again, moving from just the isolated relationship, I want to move and expand that, is that people who are trying to maintain power and maintain control in any type of situation or any type of relationship dynamic, be it the constituents to the boss, be it the government to the people, be it the wife to the husband or the husband to the wife. Anytime someone is trying to maintain power and control, you can almost expect 9 times out of 10 that whenever that is threatened, that there is going to be some level of physical, emotional, and financial violence, if that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense for the people who are watching, especially those who are getting ready to vote right before the election. So we should not be shocked in some situations when I talk about it on a broader scale, when I talk about it more on the levels of community, when violence begins to pop up in our neighborhoods. 9 times out of 10, there is some type of power or control struggle that is happening on a level that we can't see. It's not happening in our homes, but it might be shaking somewhere else. I hope I'm making sense. Give me a thumbs up, Johnny, if I'm making sense. All right, great. So there are certain things. Now, this one part here says male privilege. I want to change this, even though this wheel is designed, I copied it from somewhere else. I want to say male or female privilege, because I don't want to be gender specific. There are a lot of men who are being treated like servants. There are a lot of women who act like they are now the masters of the castle just because of the level of postmodernity or postmodern society that we are living in. And so they want to be the one who defines the roles or redefines the role. There's also economic abuse, which we've already addressed. Another one that I see that is non-gender specific is using the children, making her feel or making him feel guilty by telling them that they are a bad parent. So I really want to make sure that I am putting the non-gender specific here, because I do understand that many of our men are going through domestic violence situations, and they, because they're men, or because of the manhood, or because of the societal expectations for our Black men, that they need to just suck it up and just, be a man. I just really feel that I want to make this point very clear so that our men feel that it's okay to talk about these issues. It's okay to know that these things do happen to other men, and that we want to be, we want to be just as equally giving the men the help that they need, and stop being as biased to just the female just the female person in the relationship, right? So we have a lot of different things. The other ones are isolation. You can also tell that these signs are happening when we start to talk about our children. When we start to talk about our children, uh, they're going through emotional abuse. I've seen some children actually go through a place of what I will call now domesticated violence in their schools. Because remember, these are intimate partner relationships. These are people that you see every day. So the children see their teachers every day. And if they are being put down by these teachers, put down by these role models, they are also engaged in a level of domestic violence. Now, it may not just be in the home. Remember, we're not isolating domestic or domesticated violence just to the homes. We're expanding this to our communities. Even though domestic violence may begin in the home, the signs of it can spill out into the communities, into different dynamics, into different societies. Does that make sense so far? Johnny, you're my point person. Okay, great. So I'm going to move to the next slide, but if you, these are very easy to get. These domestic violence wheels are very easy to get. They're easy to print out on Google. You can just put domestic violence wheel, and you can get a ton of these types of wheels. Maybe we can ask the city of Rochester, I'm just thinking out loud, or U.P.B.C.A, or we can reach out to some other domestic violence agencies and just call them up and say, hey, can you send me a big poster of the domestic violence wheel just for domestic violence awareness, and or something even on a little card, just so that you can have that on your mirror or on your window. And if someone comes and you can kind of see those signs, you can ask some of these questions to ask. Are they displaying weapons? Are they destroying your property? That may be a tactic of intimidation. You need to understand what that is. Before I move forward from this slide, I just want to say, if you can name it, you can address it. So sometimes people don't know how to put the name to what they're going through, but if they can name it, then they can address it. And so you or us, we as the cosmetologists, we as the licensed practitioners, or we as the people who are often the front runners or the front linemen that these situations come to, if we know how to help these people put it into words, what they're actually going through. He smashed my phone on the ground, or she smashed my phone. She took my phone and she won't give it back, and then she broke it. Well, right here, that's intimidation. And so we want to make sure that we let people know she's trying to intimidate you, or he's trying to intimidate you, and you don't deserve to be intimidated that way. Here are some things that you can do that can help. So I'm going to move to the next slide now. Domestic violence also goes into cycles. Remember, once again, I don't want to isolate this just to the one hub of just the family dynamic, but this also comes out into our community. So what will end up happening, and that we see even with this COVID-19 crisis, with the census, with the political crisis, everything, we all have a calm phase. And I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but I think we had a calm phase. We might be even experiencing a calm phase right now, but now as the presidential elections are coming up, we're getting through this tension phase. And then we'll end up with a huge crisis or a big upset because someone's not going to be happy because someone else won, right? And then, but these are also, we have to see these not only in that these cycles repeat not only in just these these little hubs. Some people think that domestic violence is just a little hub. It's an isolated incident. It only happens in certain areas. But no, these are certain things that we can see patterns that actually permeate through our communities. And so, but for this particular conversation, the majority of intimate partners violence survivors will leave an abusive partner 7 to 12 times. How many times have people who hate their jobs attempted to quit before they finally quit because they're in an emotionally or psychologically or economically abusive situation? We have to look at abuse as something that permeates throughout all aspects of our lives. And so we'll have this calm phase, they'll have that tension phase and a crisis phase. And people will go around this cycle and around this cycle at least 7 to 12 times, depending how long they can actually stand it or whatever their tolerance level is. And sometimes can take a lifetime, where people have been in an abusive relationship for a lifetime. And some of us, we stand back and we wonder, how are you still tolerating this person, this other person acting this way? Right? Is it a learned behavior? Is one of the things that we want to definitely do. And the reason why I put this down here is because once again, I want to make sure that I'm very gender unbiased as far as gender is concerned, because women do also perpetuate violence against men. Here are some of the things that I definitely want you all to have. The top 10 signs of emotional abuse in a relationship. If people say things to upset or to frighten you, again, you can get these on Google. I got this from Live Bold and Bloom. Controls the finances, how you spend money. We not only see this tactic of emotional abuse in a relationship in just intimate partners, but we see this in domesticated violence within our communities. How many times have you seen a system that controls the finance or controls how people spend money, i.e., in order, and this is just me, I'm just talking, I'm freestyling today, in order to be able to qualify for food stamps or for any type of benefits, you have to make under or report under a certain amount. Well, that controls, and then you only qualify for so much. That is a way of someone else telling you how your finances are going to be spent and how much finance you can actually, how much income you can actually make. Swears at you or calls your names, orders you around and treats you like a servant, is intolerant or of any seeming lack of respect. We have that a lot in a lot of our corporate jobs as well, just as not just in our own homes, but in our societies. And so what I'm trying to say too is that maybe there's some domestic violence that is happening in the homes of other cultures and other societies that they actually bring to work. And then what happens is, because the cultures are mixing at places that are in workplaces, they are mixing in social different places, schools, things of that nature, these cultures begin to mix. If there's abuse, a certain level of abuse going on in one whole household and another certain level of abuse going on in another household, when those two households come together and meet at a neutral place within the society, within the community, then they bring that emotional abuse or that financial abuse to the community. And now the community is affected with vicariously with their trauma. And so we have people who are intolerant and of any seeming lack of respect. Some people demand respect at their jobs because they're being abused at home. They use guilt trips or shaming to get their way. They sulk and refuse to talk about an issue. They make a big scene about small issues. I mean, they're just over the top. And these are signs of people who have either been in an abusive relationship or emotionally abusive relationship, or people who are currently in one, or maybe it could be the signs of an abuser. They threaten infidelity or divorce to throw other people off balance. Or divorce means separation, right? I will leave your church. I won't come to your barbershop anymore. I won't, and they threaten with those type of things of trying to put guilt, put shame, things of that nature, to throw others off balance. And they accuse you of lying or having bad memory, right? So you don't remember what really happened. That's not really what happened. Try to make you think you're crazy. Um, so this leads to the way that adults conduct themselves. Although emotional abuse can be subtle, the impact is profound and can create for that individual an intense self-doubt, fear, anxiety, anger, and depression. Um, we want to just make sure that when we see these signs of people that we interact with, we have to kind of pull back sometimes because we don't want to touch that and then have it kind of get on us. It's almost like the COVID, right? You don't want you don't want to touch something and then it gets on you and now it's affecting you, it's infecting you, it's infecting everyone in your home. So when we look at this, we have to look at emotional abuse that may be happening in someone else's house as a disease, and we have to encourage treatment. We have to encourage that for them. So next, this is my favorite. I created this little chart here. I reused it. So this is not necessarily about forgiveness, but this is really about the correlation. One of the reasons why I decided to use this slide is because we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, and then we also have Erik Erikson's model of adult development. What I wanted to put this is that relationships start with development and they start with the basic physiological needs. People are always trying to get their needs fulfilled, and they want to establish either a level of trust or mistrust. As we progress through life, we have to resolve psychological dilemmas or psychological crises or psychological traumas. Domestic violence contributes to the crisis. Domestic violence contributes to the dilemmas and the crises that we have to resolve in order to gain the virtues. Now, as we continue to go through life, depending on how many years you decide, will determine the longer you stay in a relationship that is violent, the longer you stay at a job that you hate, the longer you stay at a church you don't want to be at, the longer you stay in a community that you don't want to be involved in, the longer you stay in a system that you are complaining against constantly, that is the longer that you will be traumatized by the perpetual domestic violence that you're experiencing. So that means that it will affect whether or not you gain the virtues that you need through life to have a satisfied life. In addition, the physiological needs still have to be met. Your safety and security needs still have to be met. Your love and belonging still needs to be met. And so this is the reason why a lot of people will tolerate violent situations, because the needs are actually being met. Next, I want to just tell you on a broader scale, that violence leads to abuse, right? We went through that. Violence as an isolated incident, it leads into the repetitive behavior, which leads to abuse. And that abuse, at a prolonged state, leads to traumatization. I put down here, and I like my little bumblebee. This is me with my little glasses. Isolated violent occurrences perpetuate abuse if unchecked. If we never check those things, if we don't hold people accountable, that is on every level. That goes from your partner, your parents, the systems, the justice systems, the political systems. If these little occurrences that people think that they can get away with are not checked, it will lead eventually to abuse, which leads to trauma. And this is why I say, have we considered that the reason the Black community is responding to the violence that they see on social media the way that they are is because they're being reminded of the physiological abuse they have suffered in this country. What I'm trying to say is that sometimes this abuse or this trauma can be embedded in a DNA of a culture. And so when we look at it on a cultural level, that a culture has been in a domestic violence or domesticated violence situation for a very long time. And so every time something happens, every time these little instances of violence, little instances of injustice happen, then it perpetuates and it starts to spin up that cycle where we go from that calm period to that next period, and then it blows up, and then it goes back to a calm, and then it goes back to, and this is what we're seeing right now, and COVID has helped expose it all. The last thing, this is Erik Erikson's psychosocial development. And I'm almost done. I hope I'm not boring you guys. I know I can talk. I'm a preacher by nature. And so here are the virtues that we want to gain. These are the virtues that we want to gain as we progress through life. If there is trauma in any of these levels, right, we do not gain these virtues. And so we have to make sure that when violent situations happen, that we try our hardest to try to get regroup and have people to come. The majority of intimate partner violence, or one thing that people don't know, is childhood sexual abuse, is also domestic violence. These types of abuses happen usually during the industry through inferiority stage. And so when these things happen, competency is not gained. Purpose is not gained when people are abused at these stages. They lose a sense of purpose. They don't trust people. They lose a sense of hope. If it happens during these adolescent years, 13 through 21, they lose a place of fidelity. Through 21 through 39, they lose their intimacy and they become isolated. They don't love people. So next we have, so I hope you guys understand where I'm trying to go with that. So I said, children who have been abused do not develop the virtues and are left with unresolved crisis when they become adults. How do we fix this, and where should we start? And now I am at the end of the presentation. I hope I didn't talk too fast for anybody, but I thank you for your attentiveness. And I meant to put on the domestic violence helpline, but if we can get some thoughts, some discussion, some listening, or some opinions, on the presentation, I would love to hear what you have to say. So everyone can unmute their mic. I'm going to mute mine. And what did you think about what I just discussed?
It was on point, 100%.
I would say, could you stop sharing your screen for a second, dear? There we go. Awesome. Okay. I just wanted to put out some information. A few hotline numbers for those. Of course, there's the hotline.org. That's a national number, 1-800-799-SAFE or 1-800-799-7233. That's a national number. And that hotline, the hotline.org, reason I put that out first is because there's some counseling services attached to that website for those who may need it. Now, locally, if you're here in the Rochester, Monroe County area, of course, if you're going through a situation like an emergency situation, 911 is the first place to call. If you want to seek some assistance and professionally, 211 would be able to get you to some actual assistance, individuals that may be able to assist and or help you. Of course, you can reach out to Dr. Robinson, to U.P.B.C.A. At info@upbca.org, and we'll make sure that we get the referral to the proper people if you find yourself in a domestic violence situation. We just want to make sure that we put that out there, and before we go into any questions, we want people to know how to get help, where there are services out there available to you, for you, and don't hesitate to reach out. Again, that's 911 if you're in an emergency situation immediately, 211 if you're seeking to get that type of assistance or help, or the hotline.org is a national number that can also plug you into some assistance as well too. I open up the floor for anybody that may have any questions or concerns, or just start a dialogue around Dr. Robinson. That was a lot of information. And I'm looking forward to going back to sharing that information with others. And I like the fact, I guess I want to bring this point out. I like the fact that, you talked about, because oftentimes when we hear about domestic violence, and I know you were remaining unbiased with your gender. And I remember when I wrote my legislation, that was one of the things I had to have somebody change, because when they put the legislation in, they were referencing, actually, it wasn't the legislation, it was the actual photo that they were using to promote it in one of the newspapers. They used a photo of a guy like coming after a woman. And that caused some issue for me, because I had to reach out to that newspaper and say, hey, you just made that look like it's just a man versus woman thing. Mm-hmm. You don't realize that there are a lot of men out there and young men who are going through domestic violence situations. I mean, can you expound a little bit more on the fact that, you know, there, and like you said, and that's not cool for a man to come tell his friends, oh, my girlfriend's, you know, verbally or physically abusing me. You know, oh man, you a punk, or you know, you can't, how you gonna let some girl handle you like that? But there are a lot of men who are more introverted, right? And who go through this every day.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's true. It's true all over the place. I had muted Wade for a little bit, but I want him to chime in as well. But there's so much of these young men who are in these situations, because when we look at the family dynamic, and I'm only talking from my limited knowledge of just the Black culture, um, a lot of young women have been parentified, which is a term that they've role reversed with their parents. And so the older young lady who maybe have gotten out there and maybe just hypothetically got pregnant by a young guy, she is still parentified. So she had younger siblings. Now she's in this relationship and she's treating the young man that's with her the same way that she treats the kids that she watches every day. And so she's verbally abusive because she's been verbally abusive. In the way that these young people today are communicating with one another, the aggression. And then also, I think that what contributes to that, Mr. Lightfoot, is that's why I didn't want to keep it isolated to just the home, but I also want to talk about the domesticated violence within our communities, because young men are not able to get the types of jobs or economic stability that men are supposed to be able to, you know, and I'm saying supposed to be because of the cultural norms of our society, but men are not offered the same opportunities that women are, and especially, and also Black women are being offered. The same educational opportunities. You know, a lot of times we see the school to prison pipeline for our young Black men. And so now what ends up happening is the role reversal of now women being the heads of households, women being the ones who can file the taxes, women who are the ones who are economically advantaged. And now the men who, according to previous social norms, are supposed to be the breadwinners, they're supposed to be the ones who work with their hands, are now taking on the roles of I want to say simplified, but I don't want to say it like that. But you know, they're now taking on what the society would consider more feminine roles, which I don't want to be gender specific. I don't want to go down that too far. But now the frustration of that dynamic change contributes to the violence, or the domestic violence, or the intimate partner violence that happens in the home, because there's a total role reversal. And when go ahead.
No, Andre had a hand up. I like the fact that you're making the correlation between, when we think of domestic violence, we're always thinking in the home, you know, maybe in the home, and sometimes even maybe even the workplace, right? But you know, domestic, we don't look at it as our country, our community, you know, the type of violence domestically, you know what I mean?
Right.
That we're here, right in here in America, that
Right.
that we're being that's a public health crisis, right? That we're seeing happening within our communities, play out every day. There's a violent thing that's happening domestically every day, that's playing out in our barbershops, that we see the results of it as we're ministering in our services, and we're consulting with individuals, especially these young men. And we see the pain, we see the anguish, we see the frustration, we see the trauma, we see it play out in our streets, and the violence with the shootings and the stabbings and all of the literally the violence that we see playing out in our community. But we don't ever contribute that or talk about that as domestic violence on the scale that we think of that's happening in the home. So I think that's really eye-opening, and I think that's really impactful for us to begin to look at that this violence that we're having in our community in the same fashion that we look at the domestic violence happening within inside the home. Andre, I saw you. Andre had his hand up. Okay. Anybody else have anything to share? Questions, comments?
I just wanted to say I wanted to thank Dr. Robinson and the U.P.B.C.A. for bringing up this topic because this is something that we need to look at on a constant basis. I mean, I was just riding down the street the last couple of days and I see probably domestic violence going on because domestic violence doesn't have to be with per se your wife or your longtime partner. It's any man or woman or vice versa. So I'm glad that you brought out the fact that Mr. Lightfoot that men can be abused too. You know, and I'm so glad that you record these sessions or record these shop talks so that we can replay them and people that really miss something that is valuable in terms of information can get it again. Um, very good presentation. Very good presentation. I haven't really, I haven't experienced it, but sometimes people don't really recognize when they're being abused or they're in a domestic violence relationship. So I think all this is going to be very helpful, not only to those that are suffering from it, but us that see it when we're, as you say, ministering our services to people, and maybe we can be of a great help. But yeah, I think this was a wonderful presentation, and we need to make sure that we play this again.
Yeah, I'm looking at the definition. I think you might have said it earlier, but I'm looking at the definition of domestic, and it's relating to the running of a home or to a family relationship. But then number two, it says existing or occurring inside a particular country, not foreign or international. We often think about what's happening in these third world countries, what's happening abroad, what's going on in these areas that have a lot less than we have in America. But do we often think about the domestic, what's happening in this country, right? And what's been happening for hundreds and hundreds of years, especially specific to people of color, right?
Mm.
So I think when we speak of domestic, most people think, even when they heard us probably put this flyer out and say, hey, we're going to be talking about domestic violence. Oh, we're going to talk about one man hitting a woman upside the head. No, it's much deeper than that.
Right.
It's much more broader than that. And it's much more traumatic, right? And more people are impacted by domestic violence on a scale across this country every day. And we're seeing it playing out in Ferguson. We're seeing it play out in Michigan and all over the country, even here in Rochester. We're seeing this play out on a much deeper scale than just in people's homes. So I'm so grateful that you were able to capture that particular point, because I don't think a lot of people, when they can think of domestic violence, because we think about the ribbons that people wear, and we think about the different public service announcements that we hear around that topic, but people, I don't think they ever really take the two and realize that it's a much broader conversation.
Mm.
Anybody else?
Well, I'd like to get a copy of that book, that's for sure.
Tell us about your book, Doc.
All right, I'll tell you about the book. Here we go. This is my book. I wanted to just say thank you to U.P.B.C.A. as we're wrapping up. You can get my book at drdjrobinson.com. It's also available on Kindle. It's also available on Amazon as well. This book is actually a copy of my dissertation that I actually wrote for my doctoral degree. It talks a lot about how we respond to the trauma. So I would say that, in a time of domestic violence, in a time of domesticated violence, as we would probably say, to capture, Mr. Lightfoot, the broader expanse of the treatment that Black and Brown people have received in this country. One of the things that this book does talk about is how a womanist like me, and once again, please remember that womanist is different from feminist, which is how purple is to lavender, right? And so the womanist response is in worship, it's in articulation, it's in naming, being able to educate ourselves and also empower our Black men to be able to talk about these issues, to empower our communities, as Shop Talk is doing, to empower our communities to identify. Sometimes people are frustrated because they cannot put words to the way that they are feeling. And it just comes out. It comes out in rap, it comes out in music, it comes out in different ways. But when we find a way to articulate and use our gifts to gain those virtues, to resolve those crises, then that is where the healing comes for our community. It comes for our families. And it, of course, begins in the home. Me being a womanist theologian, knowing that charity begins in the home, ministry begins in the home, love begins in the home, and then let that spill out into the community. And when that starts in the home, then this is the way. So I would love to get you a copy of this book. For those who use the hashtag, let's do it this way, U.P.B.C.A, when they order the book, you will receive $5 off just for hashtagging U.P.B.C.A from the total of the book, which includes the shipping and handling. So that'll be my promotion for U.P.B.C.A. I want to thank you again, all of you, for your support. You can also find out more information on upbca.org. You can also find the copies of the slides. You can find the link to the YouTube page. And if you would like to get more information from me, you can reach me at drdjrobinson.com. So you can also, and you can go to the website, or you can look me up on Amazon.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Well, we give you a virtual hand clap. We appreciate, and we're so fortunate to have Dr. Robinson, someone of your caliber, and you big time. You on Amazon, that's big time. So we appreciate that. And she is a member of our organization.
That's right.
All of our shop talks, for that matter, have been hosted by members of our organization. We
That's
really
right.
in empowering our membership. We believe that everyone has something to offer. We continually are out here working on behalf of barbers, beauticians, nail technicians, estheticians, anyone in the appearance enhancement industry, advocating, educating around our topics of our industry. We're going to continue to keep these meetings going. They're every third Monday of the month. Our next one is November 16th. They start at 6 o'clock. You can go to www.upbca.org to register. Once you register for one event, you register for them all. So we're going to be constantly reaching out to you. Again, you can go to our YouTube page, you can go to our Facebook page, or you can go to our website and get all of our information, updated newsletter that comes out on a frequent basis. And we'll continually to do what we do, keeping people looking good, feeling good, and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, our circle, and our community. We want to better the quality of life for ourselves and others. So we thank you for this time this evening. We ask that everyone continue to remain safe. We want to send a special shout out to my wife. It's her birthday today. We want to say happy birthday to my wife, and she's also a member of U.P.B.C.A. We congratulate all of the rest of our members if we missed anyone in between now and then. Our last meeting for their birthday. Shout outs to each and every one of you. Blessings to all of you. And we'll see you the next time around. Peace.
Peace.